Hi, my name is Fran Tesmond. I have lived through 3 retirements or redirects, 2 of my own and one of my husband's, and his redirect is much tougher by far than either of my first 2.
Hey there. Welcome to the Redirect Podcast. This is where we dive into real conversations, share stories, and just hang out talking about finding our purpose in retirement. We're glad you're along for the ride, and let's get into it. Hey guys, here we are once again on the Redirect Podcast. Super glad to be with you guys. I've got a question to get things going. Today we're going to talk about women, and women retire too, obviously, right? So let's focus first on your moms, because that's our first introduction or opportunity to have visibility into how women approach retirement. And so first, how was it in your household as it related to employment for your moms?
You know, it's interesting, as you grow up, you start having conversations with your parents about stuff that happened way back and start getting insights that are very valuable. But my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was top of her class. She was thinking about going to Ohio State, then met my dad, and they got married, and she became a stay-at-home mom. You know, but she was highly recruited by Ohio State. And this is the 1940s-ish. And my mom was really smart, still alive. She was on our podcast, but she's still at it and sharp as a tack. I thought she would have done really, really well as in a career, which was not the primary option for most women back then. So my mom became a stay-at-home mom for myself and 6 brothers and sisters. Massive job, and one that you don't get a lot of pats on the back on, that you get in a career. And when I finally had this conversation with my mom, she said, yeah, it wasn't a hard decision, but I really did want to see how far I would have gone with a degree from Ohio State.
How about you, Curt?
Well, my mom, when she first got married, was working. She always used to tell me the story, and I actually walked with him one time down in downtown Philadelphia, John Wanamaker's, underneath the clock. My dad and mom would meet for lunch every day because she worked in an office and he worked in an office. And so she started working right when they got married and living in Philadelphia. And then the kids started coming along, and then it was that era. I mean, we're in the 50s, the 60s. It was the mom would stay at home and the dad would go out and earn the living. But she was at home. You know, it was a typical suburban middle-class family, traveling salesman, father, and she was home just keeping the fort down because she was the glue to the house. She kept us in line, kept clothes on our back, food on the table, and was our support while Dad was out doing his thing. And I don't look at that as not having a job. I think, as we said, that's a very big job that sometimes doesn't get the credit it deserves.
Yeah, especially nowadays.
Yeah, what about you, Adam?
So my mom and dad had quite the disparity in age. They were 22 years apart. My dad was quite seasoned when I came along and I was born. He was 60. So my mom survived him by quite a long time, a couple of decades. She worked into her early to mid 70s because financially she had no other option.
Growing up, how did that all work? I mean, she was there when you were younger, obviously, or were you a latchkey kid, basically? I was a latchkey kid. I was, to some degree, raised by siblings. I can remember, sincerely, I remember walking to, it was about a mile and a quarter, to kindergarten by myself. And was there snow like up to here?
Uphill both ways.
Right. Of course.
Right.
Of course.
Oh, wow. That's...
How about your wives?
Wives.
You've had moms that kind of set the standard. Now you're both married, and how about them?
Well, Jackie, she got a great career when we first got married. She was working for a financial institute, which later was purchased by Fidelity, and she was coming on board when Apple was starting to be created, so she was using that as far as marketing situations for the sales force and reporting and all that stuff. And I was working, she was working, and probably looking back, I should have been the stay-at-home dad because she would have had a bigger opportunity. But we made a decision That was probably one of the biggest decisions that we've had to determine where we were going to go, because we realized we were going to be 50% down at the end of the game because only one career. And she flourished in it. She raised our kids, homeschooled our kids, and maintained the family as I was out doing my thing. So that was then, but now, oh my gosh, she's involved with 5 different projects, working here and there. She's doing the downsizing job with Gay Marie. Used to work over at 5 Seasons Racket and Tennis Club. She's been picking up odd jobs. She worked at a cafe in Beaver for 11 years, early in the morning, like making the donuts.
How about you?
I'm still in the workforce, and I am married to someone of similar age. She is still in the workforce and will likely be for quite some time.
Well, Dale, tell us about you and your wife.
Well, my wife happens to be here today, so I think we should just bring her into this. I've been thinking of answers to all these questions, and my wife is sitting across and ready to tell her story.
I wondered who this other person was.
Yeah, we're honored to have her today. But so today's friend of the Redirect podcast is my spouse, Fran. Fran and I have been married for, 35 years almost, coming up this month, as a matter of fact. Fran spent 20 years at Procter & Gamble before retiring in 2000 to stay home with her 2 boys, then ages 9 and 7. She returned to the workforce 10 years later to help lead the enrollment efforts at Seven Hills Middle and Upper Schools. And after 3 years, Fran joined me as COO of the brand Experience for a total of 7 years. When we were acquired by Hyperquake, Fran then retired a second time, and for the last 6 years has been defining what redirection looks like for her. And I will say that she never says this, but back in her past too, she was California state champion Western show. So Fran, when I met her, was very accomplished. I'm saying that because you were a very accomplished person. Actually, when I met you, you really didn't need a male in your life, but you got one anyway. So, but welcome to the show.
Thank you. Clarify that Western show doesn't mean like I was a hog or a cow. It was actually horseback riding. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we would love to hear about your story of redirects, and give us something to chew on here so we can ask you a bunch of good questions.
All right. I'm happy to do that. Getting back to moms, I was raised by a very driven woman who was the first woman to go to Stanford Law School part-time. She worked throughout. I was a latchkey kid, and she worked until she passed away, and she made it look darn easy. She also had a lot of help from my dad, who really supported her and was very happy to have her sort of realize her dreams. And she really encouraged all 3 of us kids to get advanced degrees, to have a career, to have a family. We're like, oh, sure, it looks easy. Let's go do that. So I worked for Procter & Gamble for 20 years. I was in sales for 3. Then I went back and got my MBA. Then I worked in brand management for 10, and then advertising HR for another 7. At that point, during my time at Procter, Dale and I met. And we had 2 kids. We had to hire a nanny to help take care of the kids, and found ourselves with both having vigorous careers, passing each other in the airport increasingly, passing kids off on the weekends so we could get errands done or whatever. About the same time, we started going to Crossroads, and I'd really never had a faith life until that point. We got into a small group. And our first book that we read was Too Busy Not to Pray. And it really made an impact on me from the standpoint I found myself praying for simplicity in life, because it was clear to me that it wasn't as easy as my mom made it look. Coincidentally, about the same time, she had passed away from leukemia. Literally, my last conversation with her was, gosh, I've always felt so guilty about working and focusing on my career. I hope I did okay by you kids. And I walked away from that. I had a great relationship with her. And I said, gosh, I never want to have that relationship with my kids. And
how old were you when she passed?
I was 42. And I had just had our first son at that point. between my prayer life and nudges that, hey, it's in your control to make life simpler, and my mom's experience, I made the decision to retire. It was interesting. That's the first time I retired. I retired clearly to something. I had a very clear purpose, which was focusing on the family. And I went into mom mode. So I got really involved in, because I don't like to not be busy. So I got involved in the PA. I was a scoutmaster. I was a room mom. I was a team parent. I did everything that I could to be involved in the kids' lives. I was also very fortunate at the same time to be able to buy a horse, which got me back to my childhood, my youth passion, which was all horses. So I made friends through Crossroads, through my riding, through other parents, whereas most of my other friendships had been through work, and those sort of went by the wayside. I really loved that time with the boys, raising them. But through my involvement in the school, especially with the Parents Association, and I did some work for them on their advertising campaign, 10 years into my retirement, they offered me a job being in charge of admissions for middle school and upper school. I took advantage of that because the school was something I was passionate about, and I actually got paid for doing it. So it was pretty cool.
Okay. I'd love to go back. When the decision was made about staying home, we had to have a conversation about cutting our salary in half. And that first redirection did not come without a cost. Doing what we thought was the right thing, but the reality of, you were at Proctor and I was starting a business. It was a big decision, big move for that redirect for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was literally a leap of faith. And, driving over here today in the car, it just struck me that I would not have really done that without a nudge from my higher power. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would, because my mom always reinforced you should always have a career, because you never know what goes on in your marriage, and you never want to be left without a way to support yourself, even though my mom and dad were married for 50 years. So I guess it worked for her. Yeah.
Like moving on to that. But you got very busy. I mean, so one of the things we deal with is, when you redirect or retire, you're used to being very, very busy. It sounds like you were really busy.
Yeah. Let me feed on that a little bit. So then you decided to do this for personal reasons and for your kids, and then you just dove into the mom world. How did you deal with the lack of intellectual stimulation that you got previously?
Well, but I came to realize in diving into the mom world was I wasn't using my brain as much as I used to, being strategic and having, and having that community where you're working on a project together. And I also didn't get very many pats on the back. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think when you're in a role where you're a leader or you have people reporting to you or you like working in teams, the big challenge is, okay, where can I find that same satisfaction that I got from the workplace? Because my kids aren't certainly going to give it to me in first and third grade.
Right. It's a different focus for fulfillment.
Yes.
Right? You have to, if fulfillment and that sense of accomplishment and engagement intellectually, mentally, emotionally, strategically, if that's important to you, you have to work for it.
Right.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, when you're employed, it's expected of you. For me, the first time I stopped working, I had to go look for it again. I think there were 5 things that really sort of were consistent. One was I wanted to give back to the community. And so being involved with the school and being involved in Crossroads, staying busy, that's why I just, between the horse and all my other commitments, focusing on my family, my faith, and then sort of fitness and fun, and making sure I had all of those components in my life were really important.
So that's the one redirection. All right. Yeah. Now let's fast forward a little bit. When the kids go to school, that's another form of redirection, isn't it? When all of a sudden you're the provider the whole time. So now all of a sudden your world changes again. So then when the kids went off to their own school things, now you're sitting there again, potentially going, what do I do now?
Well, Dale solved that problem for me. I was very happily working at the school. One of my sons was already in college, and the other one was a junior at the time I started. And 2.5 years into it, Dale had taken the brand experience, purchased it from the corporation he started it for, and kept asking me to come help him. It's like, I could work 36 hours and still never be done. Will you come help me? And I was like, no, I really love this job, but you go find somebody else. And that was another time where I got a nudge that was like, oh, you really need to go and do this with your husband. You need to go help him. At the time, our nest was empty. All of a sudden, we had a nest of employees and a company to run. So I sort of came on as like COO and did HR and finance, and
they would say you were head mom.
Yeah, I was head mom. I got to mother our employees, and we started with 5. We ultimately had about 17. But I was so busy with the brand experience for 7 years that
she was truly running the company for me while I was outgrowing it.
Right.
So I'd grow it, and Fran ran it, and we had creatives that thought up great ideas and producers that executed them.
Yeah.
Simple model.
Yeah, and we had some great employees that to rely on. So at one point, we took a trip to Jerusalem with Crossroads, and we'd had the company now for about 8 years. We were in our 60s. Dale was facing a surgery coming up, and we started talking about, we really need to have a plan for this company. Like, how are we going to transition?
Exit.
Yeah, what exit plan? And it was during that trip that we really came to a feeling of peace about, when we get back, let's put some feelers out and see if there's somebody who's interested in purchasing the company. And within the year, we had a local agency that wanted to buy it. The great thing was they were local. They wanted all of our people. They wanted what we did in our business was an add-on to what they did. So it was perfect. And Dale was going to stay on for 3 years, but then I was informed that I was no longer needed. Because I had
What?
8. Yeah, I'm joking.
Wait a minute. I should have kept you for
Yeah. So at any rate, they had an HR person and they had a finance person. They were well staffed, and so I wasn't really ready to retire, but I said yes, I'll step away, and so that was my second redirect. So the first time was very clear what I was going to. I was taking care of my family. Second time, I think, is more what all of us face when we get into our 60s, which is, oh, now I got all this spare time on my hands. What am I going to do? For me, it's been 6 years now. I find myself repeating these things, giving back to the community, having fun, exercising my faith, focusing on my family. I keep repeating those things and updating them as I go because I didn't have a plan. I'm not a planner, as Dale will tell you. I like to bump along in life and go where life leads me. But I found a really nice, comfortable, place to be. But after that, it's sort of like finding where you're happy. So I found, like, with giving back to the community, I tried a lot of things, but where I was happiest was where I was doing things related to my passion. So like at CityLink, I work and I help with resume writing and interviewing skills because that's part of my HR background at Procter. And then I help out at Cincinnati Therapeutic Riding and Horsemanship because I get to play with ponies and take them to hospices. They're therapy ponies. We take them to hospice and retirement homes and schools, and then I help with instruction on riding, instruction for folks with disabilities. And so those are both very rewarding to me, but selfishly they also allow me to use the skills that I developed.
We will rejoin our conversation in just a moment. Thank you for listening to the Redirect Podcast. We appreciate your support. Do you love what you're hearing? Don't keep it to yourself. Follow the Redirect Podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and never miss an episode that inspires your next chapter in life's journey. While you're there, hit a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share your favorite episode with a friend who's ready for their own life pivot. And don't forget to join the conversation on Instagram at The Redirect Podcast. Comment, tag us, and let us know how you are redirecting your journey. Now let's get back to today's conversation. I love how you've married what your skill sets are as well as your interests.
Yeah.
And that you're saying, I really want to do this. Okay, now I have this skill set. Well, let me see. Oh, I'm going to talk to that company or that business or that community agency and get engaged. I think that's a tremendous attribute. Well done.
Yeah. Well, I tried things that I wasn't good at. Like I'm an introvert, and so being at the welcome desk at CityLink was not fun for me because I'm not naturally, hey, hi, how are you? But I can instruct people. So
yeah. It's really
And that takes you to where you are now.
yeah,
You know,
up
until a couple months ago.
yeah. And I think my faith, it's really interesting just looking back, sort of preparing for this, how many times my faith is the foundation that has helped me be at peace, that has led me in, directions that prior to having that, because I was not a believer. I grew up without any religion. It's changed my life. And so
I know you have grandkids.
Yeah.
Is it something that is like another embracing thing, like when you jumped into the mom role?
Yeah.
Now you're jumping into the grandma role.
It's a combination. It's evolved. We have 2 grandkids, and for me, it's all about family. We're very lucky to have a nuclear family that loves to be together, and I am blessed to have a granddaughter here in town and one up in Cleveland that I can drive and see. So I embrace it. And that involves, spending a day babysitting. And that's
a choice.
Yeah, that's a choice. Yeah. And it's been a relatively recent adjustment. It's definitely, it's a blessing and a joy. And it really just a bright spot in terms of redirections.
Yeah, I can imagine it's quite fulfilling to sort of see your kids.
Yeah. The other thing I love is I love being outdoors. I love fitness. That's sort of how I keep my mental health. And so I have to give up maybe a day of riding my bike or walking with my friends or whatever. But I do try to keep all of that going as well because it's super important to me in my mental well-being and physical well-being.
You never really put together a big plan, did you? I mean, when you went through your redirections, some of us, really kind of put some thought and some stuff that we knew and did really well at work to,
Curt's contemplation period was 3 years.
Okay, I'm a bit anal, all right? But I mean, I've been to your house a number of times, and just hearing all the things that you're engaged with, I'm like, how come there isn't a whiteboard with a calendar and all these different colors? Because how do you keep track of all the things you're doing?
I have my to-do list and I have my Apple Calendar, but we're also the balance in the universe. And no, I did not have a plan, but it also happened pretty quickly. Like when the deal went through, it was April and they said, May 1st is your last day. I'm like, oh, well, okay. So I didn't really have time to make a plan. Yeah. And it's sort of the same thing with your retirement, which brings us to the third one, which was...
Now the therapy session starts. How you dealing with this guy being home with you now in your plan?
For our audience, I'm now backing away from the table slowly.
Picture Homer Simpson fading into the bushes.
I don't know. When I retired, it was me. It was my retirement. Now it's Dale's retirement. I'm not him, but his retirement impacts me. And I just am figuring out how it impacts us both. And we're figuring that out as we go.
What do you mean? How is he impacting you in your life now that he's there?
So when he came home and told me, this was in December, I'm retiring as of January 1st. I was like, holy cow. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I thought, you're going to be working next year.
Yeah, where are you going to live?
Yeah, really.
Where's the 90-day notice?
Yeah. So my first thought was, oh my gosh, no more wage earning. We've got to get our finance. Like we're going to have to start drawing from our retirement account, and we got to get that set up. And so
we had done all our work. We knew what we were going to get. It's a logistics thing of we got to get money coming in.
Well, we didn't know how much we were going to get each month. Yeah. So that was sort of like the first thing. The next thing was Dale made a comment about, and we'll get to spend so much time together. And I'm like, oh my God.
You should see Fran's face. That was beautiful.
Oh, boy.
We have to figure this. Like, I have things I like to do that don't involve you. I mean, you have to find your own things to do. And then we do like to travel. He would travel all the time. I'm more of a nester. And so it's like, and we can travel all the time. Like, oh, no. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I was happy for him. I was hopeful. But there's a lot of uncertainty about how it was all going to play out. And since that time, it's been, 4 months. I think there are 3 things. My takeaway were like the areas of challenge are first communication. we've lived together, been together for 38 years, including dating, and communication we've always been good at communicating with each other. But I realized our time for communication was, evenings after work, weekends, and now it could be all day. And so there's a lot of empty airspace there. We used to be able to talk about work. We talked about kids. Now we can talk about grandkids and stuff. But it's okay to have time apart. You can't expect that every minute you're going to be together, you're going to have some fascinating conversation. Dale, because he's an extrovert, likes to have me around, and so he'll draw me into watching like golf, and then which I'm not interested in. And then he will like blurt out like comments throughout it, trying to draw my attention. I'm like, please, I just want to read my book. Yeah.
Watch Rory putt this putt.
Leave me alone.
Exactly. The other thing is togetherness. So I said I was a little worried about spending so much time together. And Dale's done a really good job because he's this guy that's always liked to have his calendar full. He loves being with people. That now I'm sort of like, oh, wait a minute. We're not together as much as I thought we would be. We maybe need to sit down and talk and figure out days of the week that we're going to dedicate to doing stuff together.
A date day.
Yeah, a date day. Yeah, because we're off in different spots.
Yeah.
And so that's...
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, podcast.
Podcast has gotten Dale out of the house.
I call it his bromance with you guys. So.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
Yes, she does. And Curt, you had to have the discussion about having a date, didn't you? You kind of go through that.
Yeah, actually, this morning Jackie came up to me and she says, "So, what do you say we go to happy hour today?" Because she's been running on all cylinders. I've been running all cylinders. We have this little joke we do. Remember the Warner Brother cartoons with the Roadrunner and then the sheepdogs and the coyote? And remember when the two coyotes would pass and check in and check out? Hey, Phil. Hey, Bob. That's how we are. I mean, and we're just constantly going. Yeah. And we you have to be deliberate about that because we get caught up in our own things that we enjoy doing, but then all of a sudden and then I'm a calendar guy, so I'm plugging things in all the time, and I need to remember to say, I got to check with Jack, even though we share calendars on the phone, so I can see her calendar as well. But when I see an open spot, I just sort of jump on it as opposed to saying, hey, Jack, do we want to do something before I plug something else in?
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah. And then the last thing that for me personally is, I know Dale's in his early days of redirection. And
is it honeymoon?
I'll let him. That's his. Like I said, it's his redirect. I don't know where he is.
I'm just curious on your observation.
Yeah.
Is he having fun? Is he sort of jumping around, or is he really starting to get focused on something?
Dale will always jump around. I'm sorry. Focus is not Mr. ADHD. The Energizer Bunny will never focus. I'm sorry. Yeah. Dale he always says, this must be tough for you because now you're seeing my ADHD all the time. I'm like, I've lived with you for 38 years, so this is nothing new. But what is new is now you're in a new phase of life, and I need to be supportive of that and not judgmental. And Dale has always been like the idea guy, all action, love adventure, and I am very much a bedrock foundation for him, whether he likes it or not, to sort of keep him grounded.
You're the tether.
Yeah, I'm the tether.
Nothing wrong with that.
As part of that, like he'll say, gosh, I want to be a master gardener, or, oh, I want to get into photography. And part of me is like, wait, you got all this other stuff. You got to make choices. And I am learning that I have to encourage him to explore all those things so that he can find, where he's happiest. Because if he's happy, then I'm going to be happy.
And the important thing is, point number one is just communication, though. You've got to be open and willing to tell me what you see that maybe I don't. Yeah. Realize that for me, I truly am ADHD, and I medicated for a long time until I had a heart issue and I couldn't medicate anymore. So I'm back to being my full-on self. And I realize what that is, but what the impacts are on Fran is really important for us to talk about.
Yeah.
So, Fran, when you retired or got retired, in that period of time between your retirement and Dale's retirement, That was roughly 6 years, I think I heard you say.
Yes, yeah.
What would you say were some of the things you focused on? And maybe purpose wasn't an intentional operative word in your mindset then, but what would you say that got you through the day, kept you going, and was really valuable to you?
Well, certainly getting involved to give back to the community, because it was something that I always wanted to do more vigorously, but when I was working, I just didn't have or didn't make the time. So that was really important. My friends, I have friends from different activities, and just making sure that I still had those folks. So,
have you connected still with the people that you worked with at Procter & Gamble? Is there a relationship outside of work? Is there a relationship outside of work at the school that you worked at?
That's an interesting question, because I think in general, women are better communicators. For me personally, I've always been one of those people, if I have one or two really good close friends, I'm good. And one of my regrets in life is that I haven't maintained relationships from college. I do have friends still from P&G. I do have some friends from school, but I live sort of in the immediate moment. So I think it really depends on the person. But I would say in general, yeah, I've always had a support group wherever I was. And I think for most women, I know they are able to.
Okay, so for our male listeners, what advice that you would give to help them? How can you help us to be better communicators in the culture?
Oh, gosh. I think for most people, I know for me, it's being able to talk, express feelings, hopes, concerns, and on a regular basis. Not to hold something back and I'm going to try and figure it out, which I think a lot of men try to do, but to really say, gosh, this is what I'm facing. This is what I'm struggling. What do you think? Is this valid? And so it all gets down to being able to share emotions. And I think when you're a married couple, it's like refinding that emotional intimacy that maybe you started your relationship with and bring it back to 40 years later.
Yeah. I think psychologists would suggest that women aren't necessarily better listeners. I think traditionally they would suggest that women are more emotional or empathetic listeners, while men do listen, but it's more logical. They're listening for the equation that needs a solution, and sometimes they look past the emotional need, the plea for emotional connection, because they're listening for some problem to solve. And women, the counterpart to that is also true, that women will look right past the solution
just to
communicate over the emotional and empathetic needs of the conversation.
Just listen to me, because I need to be listened to. You don't have to fix it. Just let me talk, because you know what I'm at.
Even though there's a very clear solution.
In our minds, but in their minds, they don't want to hear it because they already have it fixed out. They just want to let you know what they're dealing with. Am I saying something that's wrong?
No, that's right. And one of my favorite self-help books ever was Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And that's the whole premise behind that. And Dale always wants to, if I say something, he wants to problem solve. I'm like, no, you don't need to solve it. I'm just telling you this so you'll listen, and vice versa.
I want to change gears a little bit. I mean, thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences, and especially I need to go out to lunch with you so you can give me some more pointers on how to work with Dan better.
Good luck.
You're going to need a dry erase board and a treasure.
All right, stop. You've given us some advice of how to, retired people deal with retired people, husbands, wives. I have nieces and nephews that are just working so hard, and my kids are working so hard. And I've actually talked to some younger people that say, I have a career, my husband has a career, and I'm wondering if I'm doing an injustice to my kids because I'm not being that mom, or I'm not being that dad because I'm being pulled so much, so hard. And then they sort of overdo it because, okay, Johnny, you want to play baseball? Sure. Sally, you want to be in ballet? Great. And now all of a sudden they're Uber services all the time, but they're not having that time together, and they're exhausted. Yeah. But what advice could you give? What's important?
Well, having grown up with a mom who worked full time, and then having made a decision on my part that I was going to stay home with the kids during their formative years, my takeaway is you can make anything work. And what you have to do is, as a family, sit down and say, what are my priorities? I never regret the decision that I made to be home with the boys for those 10 years, because those were years where I was so present with them. Whereas the previous years, like I look at pictures and I'm like, gosh, I don't even remember that because I was so tired, or, I was sort of an observer, whereas I was really involved. But I do think that sometimes the hard choices are the ones that are the most rewarding, but you can make it work either way. Kids are so resilient. Like, I didn't know any different than a working mom. So my sisters always say, I feel so sorry for you because mom wasn't around when you were little. I'm like, I had a great relationship with her. I had a great life. I grew up to be a productive human being with very few issues, I think. I don't know. But so I do think it's an individual choice, but you have to do what's going to bring you and your family peace and enjoyment.
Because we talked about earlier that you have to have that communication between spouses about not just one and done and say, this is how we're going to do retirement. Right. It's a continuous conversation. Yeah. And I think that today, and I take my hat off to all the younger people that are pulling things off, because I don't know if I could live at the pace that people are living right now. I don't think I could do it as a young person with a young family compared to what I did.
Yeah, and I had always said I will work as long as I feel like my kids are doing well and I am making contributions at work. And our life was crazy because we're going all different ways, and that's when it became really clear that, hey, something needs to change, and we had discussions about it, and we fretted over loss of income, but we
figured it out.
Yeah, we made it, and we also just made priority cuts. Like, our kids never did traveling soccer teams, and we did made decisions to make life simpler. And that's what all of us have within our control, is you tend to get on that the hamster wheel, and it's okay to jump off it or throw things off of it so that you can slow it down a little bit.
I'd like to try and take some pressure off what would be potential younger audiences that have children, dual income, all of it, that struggle, that hamster wheel. Fran, I really appreciate what you say about making those choices and priorities, and you have to assess what's important to you and your capacity to work within it. Those choices, if we can try to take some pressure off the younger folks, there is a societal pressure to have a vehicle that's younger than 3 years old, a house that is 2,500 square feet or more. Your kids are in 7 different leagues and you're taking impressive vacations all the time. If you do make adjustments in your life, that those get the right kind of priority. Of course, there's room for those things as much as is within your income and your capacity to provide those things for your family. To make this commitment, especially, nowadays where the cost of things compared to income is such a disparity in that, the deck is really stacked against 30-year-olds. It's really, really hard out there. And we've even seen some of it, like we had this conversation about the trad wife thing.
Yeah.
The traditional wife movement started in Britain back in like 2020, I think, and then it just kind of spread across the landscape like wildfire. That it's this social media driven TikTok, Instagram kind of persona that looks a lot like a 50s housewife. And this traditional wife approach is its own subset of society. And it's got a lot of political energy, like, how is it a shot against feminism? Why can't they choose to live like that? All of the noise about the politics. But there is a groundswell for a traditional approach, because the rat race, the hamster wheel, is not producing that connection within family. It's creating turmoil in life, and chaos is the norm. Schedules are radical all over the place. And why? What's the purpose? How does this serve our family? And so I think those commitments to a traditional approach, if your family has the capacity to pursue that, can yield a lot of benefit for your family and namely your children, but also for your whole family.
Yeah. And I think in the end, the wisdom of 70 years, there's nothing more important than you're going to do in your life than raise your kid.
So, any advice you would give to women as they may be approaching retirement, or women who might already be retired and their husbands are about to land in their house full time?
I think for women that are about to retire, enjoy the ride. It's another adventure. It gives you an opportunity to do things that you have maybe not been able to do, to get involved in ways you've wanted to get involved, to continue doing those things that are important to you, having fun with family and friends. And for those that are retired, I feel the greatest rewards are being able to give back. I think women are givers, we're nurturers, and by nature, either finding community groups to work with, giving back within your family, it continues to be rewarding and is perhaps even more rewarding because you have the time to actually enjoy it.
Well, this has been very enlightening for me because I'm learning more about Dale, number one. And number two, not that you want to hear I'm impressed with you, but you've had a very, very great life.
I have.
And you've experienced a lot of things that can be relatable today. Thank you so much for coming on in and putting yourself out there. We need to have more women on this show to talk about their perspective and what they're doing in life. And thank you for all the insights that you've shared with me as well as with Dale.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Catch you next time on the Redirect Podcast.
We'd like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to the 1819 Innovation Lab at the University of Cincinnati for their incredible support and partnership making this show possible. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find more of our content on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well as Instagram. Have questions or want to connect? Drop us a line at info@redirect-u.com. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, there's purpose in your life, so find it and go do something about it.